You're calling for a $50 an hour federal minimum wage. That's 7 times the current national minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Can you explain how that would be economically sustainable for small businesses? You have 60 seconds.
How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about House Rep Barbara Lee from California calling for a $50 an hour federal minimum wage. Not just California. And we know California is ridiculous. Talking about what, $15 an hour, $20 an hour for fast food workers in some restaurants. She's talking about federal minimum wage of $50. Now, understand that the current federal minimum wage is $7.25. $50. This is ridiculous. You're talking about no sense of reality, no understanding of economics, supply, demand. She has no idea about anything at all. Any kind of financial literacy is just out of the window with this assertion. Now, I've spoken about the minimum wage for many years now. I've said that when you raise minimum wages, all you do is raise the floor of poverty. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Then we're going to get to the full debate in which this was said. Not the entire debate, but this little segment. We'll get to that in a minute. But here's an example. Let's say the floor for poverty, the threshold for poverty is $35,000 for a household income, family of 4. Now, I know it could be more than that. It could be less than that. I'm just saying for the sake of argument, $35,000, family of 4, that's the threshold for poverty. If you raise the minimum wage from $7.25 to 50, not 15, $50 an hour, all you're going to do is raise that floor up. So if you are unemployed, homeless, or whatever the case may be, to even afford the basic necessities of life is going to be almost impossible, which is going to put further strain upon the federal government, which means you, the taxpayer, to close the gap between those who are disabled, mental health, whatever it is, whatever reason they can't work is going to put a greater strain on you, the taxpayer, me, the taxpayer, to bridge that gap. You're going to have crime increase. You're going to have a lot of other factors in society increase that are not desirable with a higher minimum wage. You'll also have job loss. You'll have artificial intelligence take over. You'll have robots. You'll have all kinds of things. You'll have the price of goods, services, etc. raised to meet that particular mark of $50 an hour. And then what about everybody else who does not make 50, who has skilled trades? Okay, you're a welder, plumber, HVAC. Maybe you work as public safety, police, fire, military. What about you? Are you going to get a raise, or are you going to stay right where you are? How does that really work? Does everybody get a bump up? I'm not really sure. And then, okay, if you get a bump up in your current wage to the 50, now you make minimum wage as a skilled person right next to the guy that's flipping burgers and frying up chicken wings for a living. How does that really work? Now, before I go any further and get too triggered, let's go ahead and get into the actual debate clip. If you want to see the full clip without my commentary, link as always will be in the description. If you're on IG, visit the link in the bio, go to the corresponding article on the website. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Both of our Democratic opponents are calling for a minimum wage between $20 and $25 an hour. You're calling for a $50 an hour federal minimum wage. That's 7 times the current national minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Can you explain how that would be economically sustainable for small businesses? You have 60 seconds.
First, let me say I owned and ran a small business for 11 years.
Barbara Lee, if you were a small business owner and you had employees, you ought to know better than this. And by the way, she's been in the House as a rep since 1998, 26 years, but I digress.
I created hundreds of jobs, benefits, retirement benefits, also health care benefits. I know what worker productivity means, and that means that you have to make sure that your employees are taken care of and have a living wage. In the Bay Area, I believe it was the United Way, came out with a report that very recently, $127,000 for a family of 4 is just barely enough to get by. Another survey very recently, 104,000 for a family of one, barely enough to get by.
That's California. Oakland, California, Bay Area is much different than the rest of the world, than the rest of the world and the rest of the country. So if you're using that metric to talk about a federal minimum wage, I think you're not using the right metric.
Low income because of the affordability crisis. And so just do the math. Just do the math. Of course, we have national minimum wages that we need to raise to a living wage. You're talking about $20, $25, fine. But I have got to be focused on what California needs and what the affordability factor is when we calculate this wage.
Ms. Lee, thank you. Mr. Garvey, we know where your rivals stand on minimum wage. Where do you stand?
Again, minimum wage is where it is and should be. If you look at what California has done to fast food franchises right now, increasing the minimum wage to $20, and what's going to happen? That's going to increase costs for hardworking Californians to go to a franchise. And instead of a Big Mac for $9,
Mr. Garvey, thank you. Mr.
it is
Garvey,
going to
thank
be
you.
$15.
Mr. Garvey, thank you. Your time's up.
Basic math, basic quick math right there. Okay, so that's that. I'll leave that right there. But so yeah, minimum wage. Now in that, it was kind of confusing because on one hand, the moderator was talking about you advocated for a federal minimum wage, $50 an hour. But then she's talking about California specifically. But if you're going to be in the Senate, the U.S. Senate, you're going to be voting for what's happening on Capitol Hill, federal stuff, not necessarily state stuff. So how does that really work? Either way it goes, even 20, 25 an hour on the federal level is way too high. What he said at the very end right there just made common sense. When you raise a minimum wage like that, you're just going to increase the cost of everything. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a big crazy mess. And my thing is this: I'm not against people trying to get a better wage for themselves, make a better living. But if you want higher wages, if you want to make a better living, then you got to get better skills. You got to just improve yourself. When I was a youngster working at Old Country Buffet, what was I getting paid? I started at $6.50 and I ended at $8 an hour I started working there in 2002 and I stopped in 2007. I was 17 years old in high school when I started and I stopped when I was 21. I think I turned 18 that year when I first started. So I was in high school and college. All right, now when that's over, let me go over here, make my money over there. I was doing an ad agency, graphic design, web design, photography, whatever. Did that for a long time. And then I got older. That started to change. Okay, what am I going to do now? Am I going to be a firefighter, which I could have done? Am I going to try to put all my eggs in the basket of this whole YouTube game? What am I going to do? I always got to reinvent myself. I got to do different things. I got to keep pushing forward. I cannot expect my same high school job I had washing dishes and prepping chicken wings to cook at Old Country Buffet. I cannot count on that to make a career for me. I got to start somewhere as a young man and keep going on and on and on. I have been working since I've been 16 years old. As soon as I can get a work permit or whatever it was, I'm out there working. I'm out there getting it. I'm about to be 40 years old this year. I've not stopped working. That's how you got to be. Keep on working. Keep on advancing and making yourself better rather than making the federales or your local government give you more money just because you feel like you deserve it. But as I close, I want to say this: minimum wage, obviously, not a good idea, really, because although the federal minimum wage is $7.25, I'm seeing McDonald's and whatnot around here where I live, not in the really big city in Tennessee, talking about you can get started at $15. Because at a certain point, if people have enough money and there's a demand for your service and people are going to pay a little bit more for certain things or a lot more for certain things, then you could get paid accordingly. But when you raise the wage to a ridiculous amount, and you mandate it, that's just going to remove a lot of jobs. It's going to kill a lot of business. And you know what the funny part is? People will say that they're raising the minimum wage for the little guy, for the small people out there trying to make a living. But really what you're going to do is make it impossible for small businesses, mom and pops, to be able to grow, to be able to survive. And you're going to allow the Walmarts, Amazons, etc. to live because they can weather the storm. They can invest billions into automation, artificial intelligence, or whatever, but your small mom and pop shop can't do it. They say $50 an hour, federal minimum wage. How are they going to be able to hire anybody? All you're going to do is give leverage to the big dogs that have the big bank. And as we always know, big bank takes little bank. And I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? What's your take on the federal minimum wage, or even the California minimum wage being $50 an hour? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. This is a 100% bad idea. It's a terrible idea. All you're going to do is raise the floor of poverty, cause job loss. You're going to stifle the ability of small businesses to be able to grow, to be able to expand, to be able to scale. And all you're going to do is give the big dogs more leverage. And what's the purpose of doing this? Oh, and of course, you're going to empower the illegal aliens because they're going to get paid under the table much, 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 much less than the federal or state or city or town minimum wage. That's how that's going to go. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.